Hi, I'm Kit.
And I'm Rory.
And we're from the award-winning podcast, This Paranormal Life.
Every week, we investigate a different paranormal case.
On episode 387, we actually had Emma from Real Life Ghost Stories on the pod. Huge fan favourite episode.
Sorry, is that it?
I thought that was the whole investigation. Was
so he
this
could
guy?
be German. We actually don't know.
Oh, he could be!
It was a great one, and we are also performing live across the UK and Ireland with our hilarious and terrifying live show, where we listen to real ghost stories submitted by the public, and they are insane.
I have to tell you something.
Dark hooded figure standing at the gate.
She insists I didn't see anything.
Brr, very spooky. We are coming to Glasgow, Manchester, Dublin, and London, starting on the 28th of October, running through Halloween.
It's a great way to celebrate Halloween, so get your costumes ready and grab a ticket at thisparanormallife.com/tour.
That's thisparanormallife.com/tour.
Hello and welcome to 31 Days of Terror 2025, and we are on day number 26. And I have two spooky stories for you today. And story number 1 comes from Gary. I remember back when I was around 11 or 12 years old, going to a local park with one of my friends one morning and getting totally freaked out. The park was right across the street from where we both lived, so we would often go there, you know, just to toss a football around, go on the swings, slide on monkey bars, or maybe take the occasional dip in the shallow wading pool, especially whenever it was really hot out. On this particular morning, we got up early and headed over to the park at around 8 a.m. Being a Sunday morning, this is usually when most people are typically still in bed. My buddy and I brought our baseball gloves along, tossed a ball back and forth for a while, and then just plopped ourselves down on the swings. To our delight, the park and playground area was deserted, with us being the only ones there. From what I can remember, we were both thrilled with that, as we'd now reached an age where we'd come to the realisation that most people out there are highly annoying. I distinctly remember just sitting there, gently swaying, listening to the high-pitched clanging, and feeling in my hands of the cool iron chains that supported our swings. And us not talking much about anything important, like world peace, recent medical breakthroughs, or political agendas, for example. It was more like, do you think Mary likes me? Or, those shorts make you look like a real doofus. And in the midst of our not-so-important conversation, we suddenly noticed a creepy-looking vehicle slowly pull into the parking lot. Thinking about it now, it kind of reminds me of that terrifying bat-like demon creature's truck in the movie Jeepers Creepers, with the license plate that read, "Beating You," as in, be eating you. As we lazily swung back and forth, we both kind of side-eyed this weird-ass truck. We looked over at each other and almost simultaneously said, weird. It was completely covered in rust and all of the windows appeared to be blacked out. Nothing happened for about 5 minutes or so, making us roll our eyes at each other. Finally, the driver's side door opened slowly, and what appeared to be a man in a long, dark brown robe with a hood fully covering his entire head and face gently stepped out. He looked all around the park area, including over where we were, before finally nodding to whoever else was sitting inside. Then the front passenger side door, as well as the 2 rear doors, all opened up in unison. The weirdness of the situation continued. From the front passenger side emerged what ended up being a grown-ass woman, and from the back 2 children. The oddest fuck thing was that they all wore identical long, dark brown robes, with their faces completely covered by their hoods. My friend Don then says to me, "Are you seeing this?" "Yeah, very weird," I replied. Then they proceeded to shuffle their way over towards the playground area where we were sitting. It was all just so surreal, looking at this entire family suddenly standing right there in front of us, all wearing the exact same style flowing robes and with hoods fully covering their faces. They looked like they had just come straight out of a monastery. A man, a woman, and I'm assuming their 2 young children. A girl who I guessed was about 5 years old and a boy who was maybe about 7. And the mother was visibly very pregnant to boot. She looked like she had half of a large, fully inflated beach ball crammed up under her robe. As my friend and I slowly swung back and forth on our swings, looking down at our feet, we did our best to hide the fact that we were both intently staring at them. We imagined that they were possibly a motley crew of escaped monastery dwellers who were on the lam and perhaps desperately fleeing from the tight, controlling clutches of a deranged head monk. It just seemed so frickin' weird for all of them to be wearing identical dark robes, and especially given the fact that it was an extremely hot, humid and very uncomfortable, sweat pouring down your back kind of late July morning. At some point the boy moseyed on over and sat on the swing right next to me. He tried to swing back and forth, but strangely enough he couldn't seem to get the hang of it. I could tell by his defeated body language that he was super frustrated. His parents seemed to be busy talking to each other through what appeared to be sign language. I felt bad for the kid, so I leaned in towards him and I said, "Do you need help, buddy? I can show you how to do it." His head instantly jerked up to face me, which immediately caused his hood to fall backwards and off of his until then fully covered face. As soon as our eyes met, my jaw literally dropped. What the heck am I looking at here, I thought to myself. This otherwise normal-looking young boy had steely blue eyes, but had absolutely no eyebrows, and he had tiny fleshy cauliflower stumps where his ears should have been. If that wasn't bizarre enough, he then opened his mouth to speak, but could only manage to groan out loudly in a shrill voice. His mouth was stretched wide open, giving me a clear, unobstructed view of the engorged purple nub that remained of where his tongue used to be. Surreal's just way too weak of a word to describe what I saw, and this is definitely not something that a young child, namely me, should ever have to try to mentally deal with. It was like looking at somebody's face through a kaleidoscope. My body physically recoiled on seeing this, and I think I must have let out a small scream or a yelp. Before I knew it, his little sister came running over to us moaning, or more like grunting, something completely intelligible, and I could see that her face was marred in exactly the same way. My friend looked over at me and we both let out screams. A large shadow then covered us, and it was their parents yelling down at me. Well, not exactly yelling, but more like bellowing, wet, spitty, guttural sounds that made no sense. Their hoods still shrouded their faces, but I got a glimpse of two angry sets of eyes. My friend and I jumped off the swings and backed away. The parents then quickly rounded up their children, and they all did a kind of exaggerated speed walk back to their creepy-looking rust bucket of a vehicle. And from the time they'd all gotten back in and then driven completely out of sight, had to have taken no more than 45 seconds. We sat there totally confused, mouths still hanging open, trying to comprehend what we had just seen. Our best guess is that they were all members of some kind of religious cult, and given the mutilation involving their eyes, ears and mouths, we from then on referred to them as the see no evil, hear no evil and speak no evil family. Of course later, when we told our parents and friends at school what we had seen, they all thought we were nuts and full of crap. Bottom line, we both know what we saw, and that's all that matters. Sometimes weird shit happens in life, and this was clearly one of them. Eventually we moved on from this, and were then able to change our focus onto the next strange or exciting thing that crossed our path. That is, until about 15 years later, when, while working at an electronics retail store similar to the back-in-the-day Radio Shack, if you can remember that, one day 2 30-ish-year-old guys walked into the store and started looking at various items. I approached them from behind and then asked, "Can I help you guys find something in particular?" And when they turned around to face me, it all came rushing back, like sticking my finger into a live electrical outlet. A sudden feeling of deja vu hit me like a ton of bricks. Both had no eyebrows, no ears, and had a very difficult time in trying to enunciate their words. The kicker was that they were also missing parts of their noses. Smell no evil? As a child, that must have been absolutely petrifying, to come face to face with something that you just can't understand. And listen, I'm just going to say it, some people also have no eyebrows. Okay, I have no eyebrows. And people are always shocked when they see me without my eyebrows drawn on. I even got my eyebrows tattooed on, and the tattoos faded away to nothing. So I now have no eyebrows yet again. So some people just have no eyebrows, okay? But aside from that, I mean, everything from the truck to the cloaks is kind of, eye-catching, isn't it, And you do hear those cases of families and, people who end up in kind of weird religious cults or communities where they do practice things like self-mutilation, etc., which is absolutely appalling, right? And you hear about families who kind of almost develop their own rituals within the family rather than being like anything to do with the outside world. But then there's also people who have illnesses that can cause terrible destruction to your skin, to your extremities. So I did wonder if, when I was listening to this, if the family had some sort of genetic condition or genetic disorder that caused their extremities to be injured in some way and look like they had been mutilated or removed. And there is a particular illness that I'm thinking of, which means that anything, I can't think of the name of it, but anything that hits off your skin causes damage to your skin. So even wearing clothes causes like horrific, painful blisters, burns, damage to your skin. And obviously the repeated trauma to the extremities, like hands, fingers, toes, ears, etc., can cause those appendages to have to be removed. And I wonder if this family, if they had some sort of genetic condition and therefore kept, the cloaks on in order to stop people from, looking or whatever, or being unkind. And that's why they were in the park so early in the morning at like 8 a.m. when it was unlikely to be busy so the kids could go and play. What's a mystery? And our second story today comes from Brendan. My stories aren't as extravagant as a lot of the others on your podcast. Over the years, I've looked back and figured I must have some spiritual sensitivity. I have had quite a few things that have happened. I have 3 stories that I will share. I've had a few times that I have felt unease or sick, but for no obvious reason. One of the times my wife and I were attending my work Christmas party. We were all having a good catch-up and a laugh and a joke with a few drinks. But the whole night I felt uneasy. My wife noticed me out of sorts and asked me what was wrong. I ummed and ahed and told her that I felt like something shit was going to happen tonight if we stayed. And I couldn't ignore this heaviness. We decided that we would leave everyone and went off to a restaurant in Fremantle just to get away. As soon as we arrived, the heaviness and unease lifted, and we had our meal and enjoyed the rest of the night and went home. I received a phone call from my workmate the next morning saying that one of the boys got stabbed in the head and had passed away. I won't go into the details as it's really such a sad story. This took some time to get over and took a few years for me to join the dots. Was it coincidence or my guides telling me to get out, as we would have been out with those people? Another story is a friend of mine who was quite close, who unfortunately had a heart attack and just dropped dead, couldn't be resuscitated. But days before he passed away, I started getting chest pains and got concerned. So I went to get checks thinking I was having one. All the checks came out okay, and I just put it down to a strained muscle. Here's the spooky part. The night that he passed away, my chest pains left. Just got better, just like that. Again, coincidence, or my guides. My wife and I were watching The Conjuring, or some sort of horror in the lounge room. And out of the blue, a music box that was my granddad's just started playing in the display cabinet. The music box is an old Model T Ford that has a Scotch decanter as the cab and a set of shot glasses in the pillion seat. It has a wind-up music box that plays the creepy style music that paranormal investigators use for their music boxes. My wife and I looked at each other, ready to just burn the house down. Fuck trying to explain it, just burn it. I've had this car for over 10 years and it has never been wound up, so we just put it down to my granddad saying, hey. Fair to say it creeps the fuck out of us, and it hasn't played again since. And that was a good year ago since the encounter. Oh, it sounds like your intuition is absolutely on point. I mean, what an awful thing for someone to have been stabbed in the head and passed away. That is absolutely horrific. Obviously there was something in the air that night that was telling you that you needed to get out of there. Whether it was just, a good instinct, intuition, or as you said, guides or guardian angel, whatever it was, got you out of that place. And it just goes to show, sometimes it's a really good thing to listen to your intuition. You know, your gut will tell you things that your brain doesn't want to hear. And I think that's a pretty powerful thing. And again, you know, you getting chest pains, it's like your body was telling you something is coming, something is wrong. But obviously, how are you going to interpret that? You don't know how to interpret that or how to understand that. But it's like your body or the guides or your intuition, whatever it was prepping you for this event that was about to happen. And that is really incredible. Like, I have zero intuition about things. I think I see the red flags, my gut tells me, my brain tells me, and I'm just like, I'm sure it's fine. And I just continue like a bull in a china shop. So I wish I had some of that intuition in me. That would be absolutely great. However, music box, no. I know that it is just your granddad saying hello by channeling through an item that belonged to him. That, you know what I mean? That's a lovely thing, right? But why does it have to be a creepy music box? Why can't it be a scratch card with the winning, you know, with that has £10,000 on it? You know, why can't it be through the winning lottery numbers? Why does it have to be through a creepy music box? Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Thank you to Gary and to Brendan for sending in your stories. Remember, if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or for $2 a month, you can get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.